Greetings hobbyists, this is nSolve, and in this video we're going to have a look at all the tools that come as part of nSolve. So we've already had a look at the N suite of tools. There's a link to the playlist for nSolve which includes this in the description, and what I want to do is start going through some of the nSolve standard tools which we can find on this vertical set of tools. I'm just going to hold down S to scale that up so we can see them a bit more easily. So we'll go through each of these tools in turn. I've done videos of these individually, so if you've already watched those, there's nothing new here. It's just having them all together in one video so it's in one place because some people will prefer that. So we'll do these in order, and the select tool is the first that we're going to talk about. And this is a relatively simple tool to use, or at least on the surface. You just select it, click drag, and you've selected a load of vertices, and if you go into X-ray mode with Shift and Z, it will select vertices through the object. Nice and easy. But it is a little bit more complex than this, so let's come into front view and talk about what this can do. I'm going to start by selecting here, and then we'll press D to bring up my helper menu. So this basically sets up what nSolve is going to do. You might have this looking like this, and you've got all the different modes that you can go into. We're in the nSolve mode here, and I have nSuite showing as well because I like to have both tool sets visible at the same time. I'm going to click here to go into nSolve. And here we can select what all of our different buttons do. The standard left mouse, shift, control and alt. I'm going to do a separate video talking about this setup and how we can use this to create a set of tools that works in the way we want, but I'll do that towards the end of this video series. So at the moment we've got the left mouse button set to select. We can change it, and you'll notice it changes it on this side as well. You don't have to go into the menu for this, you can just do it here. So you can access it both ways. But whenever we're in a specific tool, the helper menu will tell us what mode it's in if there's several options of what we can do. And at the moment it's set to set. But I can change this to add. And what that's going to mean is now each time I click, I'm just going to click and add more vertices to the selection we've already got. But as opposed to standard Blender where we have to hold down Shift to do this, we don't need to. It's just going to do it as we go. So if you don't want to constantly hold down that Shift button for some complex set of vertices, edges or faces to select, this might be really nice. You've also got the option to subtract, so we can come in here and just take off some of these vertices if we don't want them. Again, without holding down any keyboard buttons. And finally, we have a really nice method which is intersect. Now this works like the intersection boolean. So for example, say I want to select this middle group of vertices here, but I want to keep the vertices here and here unselected. What I could do is use this intersection and basically just go here, and what it will do is keep the vertices that are already selected, but deselect any of the ones that aren't in this grid. So quite a useful function here. Now I do want to highlight that if we go into standard Blender, we can do this anyway. I'm not saying that this is a groundbreaking tool. So for example, if I hold down there and then hold down Shift and then select those, I can do. And if I hold down Control, I can also deselect our different vertices as well. And then finally, to do the intersection, we hold down Control Shift and select in the same way. So this isn't groundbreaking, but if you do want something where you don't have to keep holding down multiple keys, you just press D and select which one you want, then that's great. I think it'd be really cool if you could click and hold down here on the select option, and it would give you the options there so you don't have to keep going into that helper menu, but that's the way it is. I also wanted to mention that if you want to stay in nSolve, for example here I can't use the Shift button because at the moment if I hold down Shift it's creating a join function because we've got it set to join. If I change these all to select, then effectively we'll have that same functionality. So click, Shift click, and there we'll add it, Control click will subtract, and here Alt will then do the intersection selection. So we can do that if we want to, and as I said, this might be useful to set up as a persona, and again we'll talk about personas in a separate video. This is a file that comes with nSolve. If you just click here on the nSolve icon with nothing else selected and press D, you can get these demo files, and this one is the Q tanker if you want to try this out yourself. But we're just going to go into edit mode, so let's go to vertex mode, and we're going to come into nSolve, and importantly we're going to use the join tool. Now this is a very nice time-saving tool. All this does is what the standard join feature would be. Instead of having to click, and then coming across the keyboard to press J, you don't need to do that anymore. You just click on your vertex, drag it, and then it joins it to that other side. You can also use this across multiple edges. So for example, I could do there, and it will join through. A really nice tool. And it's going to be very useful for solving problems if you've got n-gons and want quad geometry. I should say, obviously this is not the best way to solve this, but we haven't talked about the other tools yet, and we will talk about those in time. If you are impatient to get those, I'm doing one video a day on each of those, so they're easy to search for in the future. But if you do want them ahead of time, they're already out in the Patreon because the Patreon's a week ahead of time. So if I then press D and bring up the helper option, we can see we've got other options here of what we can join to. So for example, we can turn these on and off. For example, we might want to put this to an edge, which means that I can click this and join to places on edges. I will say if you're quite zoomed out, it might not like this, so you want to zoom in further and then it will allow you to do this anywhere on this edge. You also, if we go back and press D again, have the option instead of doing this to an edge to do perfectly to the middle of an edge. Now this is a really nice feature, I think, just to make sure everything is quite evenly distributed. You also have under this menu the option of doing this to a face, and if you use this effectively, this works like the poke face option, except you can tell it where to poke the face. So you could do it off to the side. Or if you wanted to, let's bring up that helper menu again with D, we could turn that off and choose center face, and there it will snap to the center of that face, allowing you to poke only certain faces in the center, which is quite useful if you then want to, say, create some sort of interesting different shape or have these point upwards. Finally, the thing that I find most useful about this is that if we come to D, I'm going to turn off center face and click multi-join. What that's going to allow us to do is select multiple vertices and then drag them to one vertex, and it will join them all in one go. Definitely a time-saving feature in comparison to the standard Blender workflow. So to look at this merge function, we're going to set up a Boolean issue where we're going to have a cube, we're going to subdivide it to make it easier to merge together later, and then we're going to Boolean out this quad sphere. Now looking at this has got a lot of awful geometry on it. There'd be a number of ways of solving this, but one thing we'd want to do is try to get these quads. So what we'd do normally is click there, shift click there, M, and then merge at last, and this is all going to get very boring. And even with something like machine tools, which does make this faster, where we can click, shift, click, and then press 1, it's still going to get a bit repetitive, moving backwards and forwards between shift and 1 to get all of these vertices sorted. So with nSolve, we're going to solve that issue quite nicely by using the merge function. And all that does is allow you to click on a vertex and drag it to another vertex, and it will merge together. So really easy, just moving things around to keep everything in quad geometry. Now if we press D to bring up the helper menu and go into the nSolve section, we can see that we do have some additional options as well. For example, we can multi-merge. This is quite useful. For example, I can click there and then just drag, and both of them will merge to that point. This is probably a bit more visible if I did something like there and dragged there, and then everything will merge to that one point. Not that I'd probably do that in this situation. The other option that we have, let's just turn off multi-merge, is to center merge. Now, again, I'll do this over here in a way that we wouldn't do, but just to show what it does. It will just work as we normally would do. If I click, shift click, M, and then merge at center, it will merge at the center of those 2 points. Or if I was using machine tools, I could press shift and 1 to do the same thing. Well, this will mean that I don't have to click on anything. I can just grab that vertex, move it to there, and it nicely shows a black sphere of where that's going to merge together, and we can merge those together. This will also work in multi-merge, so let's just bring in multi-merge, where I could click, let's say, all 3 of those, and then just drag to that one, and then it's going to merge that perfectly in the center of those selected objects. So a lot of versatility there. Though once again, I really wish that I didn't have to come to the helper menu to select these. It would be really nice if I could just click and hold down on this button here, and then it had those as options. Though I guess that would provide the problem that you wouldn't be able to select both of them at the same time. So maybe this is a way you have to go. Perhaps it would be good if you had multi-merge there as an option, and then you just held down shift to merge at center. Quick update since recording this, and Master Xeon, who's behind Team C, was kind enough to reach out and has actually been really generous with his time, talking me through some other elements that I hadn't even realised was going on within nSolve. So really massive thanks to him. And some of the future videos I'm going to do is going to really benefit from that additional knowledge that he's been willing to impart and spend some time talking me through. So firstly, I wanted to show that the merge function actually does have an ability to use the center function without having to select, if I press D, and come to the merge function, this center merge. So if you don't want to have it working all the time, say you're merging things together and you just decide you want to do it once, what you do is you just drag as you normally would and then hold down Alt and it works as a center merge. So that's really cool. The other thing I should also say is that you don't always have to bring up the helper menu. You can just come to, if you notice here, I haven't talked about this yet, I'm going to do it in a future video, but you have all the different choices of what all of your buttons can do. So for example, at the moment, left mouse button, which is the setting here, is set to merge, and if we click there, we can also choose to do multi-merge from that menu. So that's another way of getting this, and you'll notice that multi-merge has got an M, and if we put center merge we get a C, or you can just have one of them on. So it really clearly shows you what you're doing, and that will work from either place, from the solver menu as well. So it's really clear what you're doing in these menus at the top left hand corner. To look at the line tool, I've brought in this one of the demo objects that comes with nSolve. I really do like that we get these demo objects. And if I come to vertex mode, we can see we've got a lot of issues here that we'd need to resolve. Let's just press Alt and 4 to get into nSolve. Obviously we could have done that over here as well, and there's multiple ways to get into it. We're going to look at the line tool. Now this has a lot of things that needs fixing. That's kind of the point of the demo files. We could be sort of looking at the different things that we can do here to fix it. So that's the point of these files. Don't expect them to be perfect. They're meant to have errors for you to fix. But we're going to have a look at the line tool and talk about what this does. Now, the line tool is a slightly odd one to me. I'm not quite sure if I feel that this is necessary, but it does have some benefits over the knife tool. So let's talk about what this does. The main idea of this, from what I can tell, is that you draw a line. So let's say, for example, I want a line that goes from here to here, and you don't need to start specifically with any vertices. You just draw it, click, and then it will attach it to the nearest relevant vertices. So we've got those there. And then if I want to, I could just slide that down if they need to be slid down. But the important thing compared to the knife tool is that it makes those assumptions and starts looking at, well, what's the closest vertex? So I can start doing things like that. It doesn't require me to go point to point. So in a way, it speeds things up, at a slight disadvantage of it creating an additional vertex at points, so it just depends on whether those are going to be a problem. The other thing that's quite nice about this is that it's not trying to snap to things, so you won't have any problems of auto snapping to vertices that are really close by. So there is some use to it there. I just don't quite know if it really needs its own tool. Now, this will do things. For example, let's just have a look here. So it is based on view. So if I come here and we do a line tool from there to there, it will create those lines, but it is based on view. So it started missing these out because it couldn't see those lines. Now we do have a cut through function as well. You can either press D and then come to nSolve your options here and select cut through, or you can just start pressing and then hold C and it is going to cut through and go through to the other side. So here it's cut through all of those edges as I kind of wanted it to do, and it has gone through to the other side as well. So quite useful there. That would be really cool if there was a way of saying cut through the things that are near to the surfaces, but not through everything as if it was straight through to the other side. Though that seems like a possible programming nightmare. That would be awesome. That would really give a different function for the line tool versus the knife tool, where the knife tool has to go all the way through. Either way, a tool that should help speed things up. I'm just not totally sure that it's necessary with the knife tool already being there. But as I say, it is a bit faster because you don't have to search for those connection points. It will work them out itself. So we'll continue looking at this complex cylinder to have a look at the collapse tool. So if we select this, the way this works effectively is that it is like a merge by distance, except you get to control the distance really nice and visually, and you get to control which vertices are involved. So for example, if I was to come here and we wanted to fix some of these issues, and there are a number of them on this demo file quite intentionally, I could try and solve some of them using merge by distance. So I'll just A, M, and then merge by distance, and then I can come here and start increasing the distance. Let's do that until we get rid of them, but you'll notice at this point we're starting to get these collapse, and we have no control over which one it collapses to. For example, here, as it collapses, this vertex that was here has moved all the way over here, ruining the shape of this circle, and we don't want that. We wanted this vertex to move to this one. So we lack some control with the merge tool, and it's affecting everything simultaneously. The way the collapse function works is that you click on a vertex, drag out, and anything within that circle will collapse into or merge to the one that was originally selected. So for example here, with all of this complex nonsense going on that we don't really want, I can just simply go there and quite visually see which one's going to collapse to where, and then do the same thing here. Or if I wanted to, I could have done it from the other one, but that's probably not going to work out as good. Now for lots of spaces, for example here, this just gives a really quick way of just dragging things. For example, we don't want either of those, so I can just drag it to the point where it selects both of them and move it. That one I can just drag to there. Each time I'm getting to control what goes where. So for example here, not that we'd actually want to collapse these, but I could select, well, I want both of these to go to that one, or I want them both to go to this one, or I want them both to go to this one. It's a very, very elegant method of controlling all of these vertices and the way they're going to collapse and what they're centered around. I'm a huge fan of this. I think it's a really, really good tool with a lot of well-designed control. And if you do ever get to the point where you're going to hit something where you do have more vertices than you want to actually connect with, I'm trying to find an example, but there isn't really a good one. Maybe here, because I want to select all of these and merge them together, but they're going to be too far away because if I select this one, it's going to start hitting the others. That's where we start using other tools in nSolve, for example, the Dissolve tool. And we've got the Dissolve tool right here, and this is awesome. Effectively, it is taking the job of you selecting a vertex. In fact, let's come out of this, select that vertex, and then press Ctrl and X, and then it dissolves the vertex. Or you could go into edge mode, select here, Ctrl and X to dissolve that edge. And each time you're having to hit Ctrl and X, and it's very tedious. Whereas if we just come into the dissolve function, what that allows us to do is click, and as soon as you drag over an edge and you release, it will dissolve that edge. This makes this very, very fast to do, and you can just keep going with it. It's absolutely brilliant. I don't need to each time hit Ctrl and X to do things, though do note it has made an assumption here which we might not want it to do. So if I hit D, you can see that we've got this option here to dissolve verts. We can get rid of that, and then if we just come and click and do it, it will not make that assumption. And then for example, I could hold down Shift and just slide that along. So it depends what works in each situation. And it's great that we've got the power to pick exactly what we want to do here. So some finesse here, what this will do is as you click and drag, if you don't like the first one and you drag onto another or another, it will pick the last thing that you've dragged over. So it's not like if you've done it and you've picked the wrong place, it's going to cause you a problem. The final part of this tool that we want to look at, if I hit D, is we've got this split of face. I think this is meant to be split off face from the text in the description and maybe a slight typo, but it adds an interesting option here, which is it's going to get nSolve to start considering the geometry around this object or around the edge that we're going to dissolve. Now, we'll have a look at this and it will look like it's not really doing much work, but we'll talk about it in a second. But if I was to not have this available and I clicked there, we're going to create what's actually going to be an n-gon because this vertex is going to be left. Now, if we go back and I click split off face and do that, it's going to try and maintain this geometry, but it looks like it hasn't done a very good job. Now, that's actually because I haven't done enough cleanup. There's some vertices here and here that are causing a problem. So let's just go back, go into vertex mode. What I'm going to do is collapse this to there and collapse this one to there. That's using the collapse feature. If you haven't seen that video, there's a link in the description. And now if I come and do this, you'll notice that it's trying to maintain the geometry as best as it can while dissolving the edge that I've requested. So that is what the split off face does, but it does require the surrounding geometry to be relatively good. To demonstrate the offset tool, what we're going to do is bring in a cube, and we're just going to make that a slightly more interesting shape. So I'm going to Shift and D to bring a copy of that there, and then we'll select that one and then Control Shift and minus to cut that out, just to make this a little bit more interesting. Now the offset function is going to be mostly used when doing something like a subdivision surface, so we're going to prep for that. So I'm going to go into edge mode, Alt and 4, and we're going to go into nSolve, and we're just going to use the join tool to sort out some of these non-quad faces. So let's just sort that out there, and we're pretty good to go. What I'm going to do is Shift and D and bring a copy of that along the X-axis. So we've got a copy that we can discuss something about later. So if we select this and press Ctrl and 3 to add a subdivision surface, we can see this gets very messy because we need to add some controlling loops on this geometry. So let's go into edge mode and bring back nSolve. So we're going to want to have an offset on each of these edges, not the ones that are stopping the n-gons, but all of the other ones. Now there's a couple of ways we can do this, and there's a slight issue with one of them. It isn't a big issue, but it's one of the major reasons why this tool is really useful. I have spoken about this when I talk about the nSuite set of tools, but I want to talk about it again to make sure everyone's clear about it if you've missed that video. And that is that I could do this instead of using nSolve just by adding in a bevel. So I'm going to Ctrl and B to add in a bevel. I'm going to scroll up to put in one controlling loop. And then as I do that, I want to change the shape to 1. And that's going to create these perfectly offset edges that's going to work to control this. Now, there's an issue with this though, and that is that the bevel tool has a memory to it. So if I go into edge mode here, and then I decide that I don't want to do this with subdivision surface, I just want to do this with a bevel, I can Control and B, and it's going to have the same bevel now, annoyingly. It's got my shape of 1, I don't want that, I probably want it to be 0.5, and then the segments are 2, let's just increase that. I should also point out that my bevel is going to look better than most because this automatically comes in with a sharp for the outer mitre. I'd really recommend always change that to arc, it gives a much nicer appearance, and then we can shade that auto smooth. So by using a bevel to do this, we've now impeded our ability to do a bevel later, or at least it's taken longer to do the bevel because we've had to change settings. So having a separate tool that's going to be in nSolve that allows us to just select offset and then drag this is going to be a really nice function. It means that once we've done this, if I come back and want to use a bevel on these edges, so let's just select those again, I can Control and B, and it's not been affected by having to use a bevel somewhere else. So a really nice change, I would argue, and a really good tool to have, even if it feels relatively innocuous. Now I'm actually going to undo this because I do want to talk about one other thing as well, and that is that if we come back into nSolve, we'll notice there's an offset function here on the nSolve set of tools, but there's also an offset function here on the nSuite set of tools. Notice that you have access to both of those with nSolve. It basically gives you 3 add-ons in one in many ways, so it is an absolute bargain in terms of the tools that you get. Now there is a difference between these, and it is a slight difference, but I want you to be aware of it. Using the option in nSolve, the vertical set of tools, what that allows me to do is, while that is still active, I can shift select as many edges as I want and then click and drag to make that work. Whereas this tool here, being part of the nSuite, works in a different way. There I have to click on all of them, and then I click on this and drag from the tool. And then if I want to do somewhere else, let's say here and here, I have to come back down to the tool again to do that, which is fine. But what's nice about the nSolve version is that I can just basically keep this active, click and drag and it's working, and then maybe do here as well, click and drag and it's working. So it kind of depends which one you're going to use, and if you want to use that just once or if you want to use it multiple times. Let's just go to collapse mode and sort that and that one out quickly. But as I said, there is a slight difference between these two offset functions, and it's mostly to do with how you want to continue using that tool as you proceed with your modeling. The final of the nSolve tools that we need to look at is the knife tool. So let's start off with probably the most important thing to mention if we go into nSolve, and that is that the knife tool, which we can find here, is just access to Blender's standard knife tool. Now, don't get me wrong, look, there's a huge volume of other tools that we've got in this add-on, and there's no claim that every single tool is reinventing the wheel, though some of them like Hard Bevel are absolutely amazing, as are many of the other tools just for speeding up workflow. But what this does is it means that you can just very quickly access the knife tool. For example, I could just click here and then use shift to snap to the middle of the edge if I wanted to, just as we normally do with the knife tool. Click space and we've got that cut. This is no different to if I was just in any other mode. Let's just come off those edges. If I hit K, I can do exactly the same thing. Click, shift to go to the middle, and then shift to keep on the middle, and then go here and then do exactly the same thing. It is nothing particularly new. But, and for me this is a very big but, the convenience of this is that once I've got the knife tool on, it is always on. As opposed to, in fact, let's just come here. If I use the knife tool and then draw from here to here and then confirm, I then have to come all the way across my keyboard to hit K again to get the knife tool back. With the nSolve tools, I don't need to do that. I can be happily selecting edges and shift selecting edges or doing anything I want as long as I'm just quickly clicking the keyboard. But anytime I click and hold down for more than a split second, so there, it starts my knife tool. And then I can, again, use whatever functions that I want to use that are part of the knife tool, go back to selecting things. For example, maybe I want to select there, and then G to move them. I don't know why I would, but let's just take that as an example. And then I can come back here without having to go to the knife tool, click, drag slightly, and then I've got the knife tool enabled. And let's go to do that all in the middle vertices. It is really helpful just having that there as a tool that's always accessible, that I don't need to go across my keyboard to use. And in combination with other features that are part of nSolve, like the Dissolve tool, it just speeds up life a lot in terms of what I actually need to be doing or what I want there to be on my mesh. So definitely not groundbreaking, but very useful to have as part of this easy access toolset that keeps perpetually working. And what's especially useful is you can add that knife to part of these menus to be readily available for use. Thank you very much if you stayed till the end of that. I appreciate that's quite a long video covering a lot of different tools when put together all in one go. If you did find that helpful, it would be really appreciated if you hit that like button. It really does help the channel out more than you know, getting YouTube to show more people the video. If you aren't subscribed to the channel, then feel free to subscribe if it's covered things that interest you. And if you are looking for more things nSolve, there is a link to the playlist in the description, and I will keep using it in more videos. Have a great day, guys.